Alrighty, let me see here, guys. Let me double check everything. I think we are live as we speak. So, welcome everybody who's watching us right now. It is really exciting to see all of you guys. Hopefully, you are a little bit tired and excited at the same time as I am. I'm joined today, per usual, by two of my good friends, Matt and Daniel. And when I say per usual, Daniel, I'm looking at you. So it's good to have you here for the second time. And we definitely hope this is not your last one. Because every time it's the three of us, we're having super meaningful conversations here. So,
oh, man.
How are you guys doing?
Feeling's mutual. I enjoy it every time, Anton.
Yeah, awesome. Well, guys, welcome to the, I'm addressing everybody who's watching us. So welcome to the Growth Clinic Live. We are going to take a little bit of a kind of turn today. We're not going to talk about what's happening in the world as much. And there's a lot that's going on, right? I'm looking at Matt here, and Matt and I, we kind of help you guys all digest, and we ourselves, we learn as we speak as well. Digest everything that's happening in the world today. And these last couple of weeks, I mean, it's a bunch, right? It's a bouquet of just all kinds of a spectrum of all kinds of stuff that's happening, from nuclear threats to economy threats to England increasing its interest rates to, there's a lot. But today we're going to be kind of stepping back a little bit, because every once in a while you should, right? Stepping back and asking yourself a question: do I take care of myself? Right. Yeah. And every time, by the way, you guys see Daniel here. Well, as of right now, he's been our expert when it comes to optimizing yourself, nutrition, health, mindset, habits, right? And things like that. Now, that's not to say that Daniel has a lot more to offer, and we're gonna pick your brain, Daniel, on a couple of things when it comes to lean, innovation, and things like that, because I know this is your full-time thing. So. So today, guys, we are going to be talking about habits, right? And my gosh, what a brand new subject, right? What a subject that we never thought about this kind of thing. And what a pleasant subject, right? So it sounds like we're going to be talking today about what you should be doing, what you have to be doing, what you must be doing. And it sounds like you're going to leave, today's live stream feeling guilty and feeling shamed, and feeling not good about you and how you haven't developed habits. Well, I'm here to let you guys all know that this is not the case. We are all in the same shoes, right? So some of us may figured out a couple of things. I'm looking at Daniel specifically, right? So he's our kind of guru and a mentor when it comes to how do you optimize yourself? How do you create energy in your life? By the way, go listen to his podcast. Most recent episode is really interesting. I've listened to that one. And I think myself, I would say I'm probably on the other side of the spectrum here. I could use a couple of things out there. So anyway, let's talk about habits. But guys, you're good, you're okay, you're enough. I'm going to put a period at the end here. Let's jump into the conversation about the habits. What's the deal, guys? And I'm looking at both of you right now. So what's the deal about habits? Like why habits are important? We got to accomplish a couple of things in life, right? Why habits and not a sprint, right? Why habits and not necessarily jam it, binge it, force it, and do it all at once, and then just kind of sit back and relax? What's the deal about habits? Why is it important?
So I would say, firstly, the way that habits serve you is when you do something that's out of your norm, it puts a tax on your brain. You have to create new synaptic connections. You don't want to have to figure out how to brush your teeth every single day. Okay. It's something that it's basically ingrained. You grab the thing and all of a sudden you're done. You don't even remember doing it half the time. So the way that habits serve is they preserve a great deal of your cognitive room so that you can make the decisions during the day that are pressing. And the way, and we'll get into this, but the way that you identify which habits to do is you look at the person you want to become, and then you look at how these routines are going to serve you to become that person, or maintain the person you are, or become less of the person that you're unhappy, the parts of you that you're unhappy about.
So you're saying that habits cost us less, right?
Less
will,
yes,
right? Yeah. Less some sort of convincing yourself. It's a habit. You just do it.
Yes, and I'm not gonna. I've read so many self-development books that talk about, well, it's 10 days to create a habit, it's 30 days. My response to that has always been, well, it depends on the habit. It doesn't take you 30 days to figure out how to smoke a cigarette and get used to it. You can do that. You can do that a few days in a row, and then you don't have to think much about it. And I can tell you, for me personally, if I have sweets after dinner a couple nights in a row, it doesn't take many days to create a habit of, now I've had dinner, I want something sweet. So it's all relative to, number one, when do you get the reward? Okay, so with the sweets, you don't have to wait long for reward, right? But then there are those longer term goals, and if you want to go on the extreme side, walking across the stage with your degree, right? That it's the habits that get you to that point. And so that's two extremes of, one is an immediate reward and one is a very long-term reward. So to me, that's a big part of how long it takes you to sustain it, is when you do the activity itself, how rewarding is it?
So like New Year comes, I sign up for the gym, right? Because that's what I do, right? That's what we all do, in a sense. And then I show up to the gym like 2 or 3 times. I look at my bicep and somehow it doesn't change. And my reward is gone, and all of a sudden, the only entity that gained was the gym with the sign-up cost, right?
Right, and that's because, or at least one reason for that is because if your trigger to change was based on a date, then you're not likely to have anything to fall back on. You basically took an arbitrary date and stated that now I'm going to change. And if I were coaching someone, I would say something along the lines of saying, spend time talking about why this is the person you want to become. And I can't tell you how often it is that someone who's struggling with health comes to me and they'll say, I've tried this, I've tried that. And then either their shirt or their car, they're constantly surrounding themselves with the person they are. So, for example, their favorite snack cakes. They have a shirt with their favorite snack cakes, or they have their favorite pub's art. All their art is like pubs and pub food inside their house. And they go, this is pictures of me at all these places. And I'll think, well, that's pretty much when you come in here, you're constantly reinforcing that this is the person who I am. If you look at your profile picture, is it you eating a piece of pizza? You're basically saying, this is the person I am. And yeah, you can take things on the other extreme too. There's plenty of people who I'm friends with on Instagram, and they'll be like, the happy runner or something like that, right? And to some extent, that's good. I don't like to define myself as Daniel is this. And you guys know I used to be a pretty serious runner, but I look at it as, that's whether or not that's a good thing or bad thing, you define yourself as that. So look at your profile picture. Look at, they say, look at your 5 closest friends and you're the average. Do you really think that if you and your 5 closest friends are very unhealthy, that suddenly you're going to be able to change and keep that same circle? It's just not likely. If your habits with them are, we watch football games and baseball games all day, Saturday and Sunday, you'll have to reinvent or we meet at a bar 3 nights a week and we go play pool. This is what I mean by start by looking at that and saying, how is this serving me? And is this the person I want to become? To me, it's a way better use of time to do that and to define that than it is to open the magazine or look at some clickbait article about how to lose 30 pounds in 30 days. So
right.
If you know the whys, you can deal with the hows. So start with why it's important that you need to change, and it'll be much easier for you to sustain. Your example, Anton, of, I started on New Year's. You're not gonna, when that alarm goes off and you did not sleep well, whatever, or you've missed 2 workouts in a row, what are you going to fall back on that says, no, it's not okay to just roll over? And if it's, I started on New Year's and I send that gym membership, it'll be a lot easier to go, it's paid for a while and I'll just go later. So that's where I said I'd get a little psychological on you. Is that's to me one of the most underrated aspects is if you don't define why it's important to you and why you want to change and who you want to become, then you're taking these arbitrary habits and feedbacks and workouts and trying to force fit them into your current perspective.
Mm-hmm. So Daniel, do you take action by writing that down, or you want to journal, or to jot a note, or post it?
I think it's multiple things, and I'm glad you asked that question because there's actually been a lot of studies. Some of them conflict, but in my opinion, if you were the kind of person who likes accountability, after you have defined the person you want to become, you need to start sharing your goals in some type of accountability setting, whether it be with your partner, with your friends, and say, I'm going to get to this point by this date. And there is something about, number one, you've written it down, which makes it X number of times more likely to happen because you wrote it down. But number two, if you share that goal with somebody that you think will hold you accountable, I feel like I've said it, now I have to do it. And I just, before we went on air, I was just saying that I was invited to a run, and I have not ran in a while. And I only went because the guy asked me to do it, and he didn't show up. But I didn't know. Basically, I was like, I told myself, well, I'm going to go do it because he asked me to do it. And it was so important to me that I didn't violate that I was like, no excuse. And it was early in the morning, by the way. And I had a great time, whatever. But to me, accountability is one of the things that you can leverage. Not everybody needs it. So, for example, I have friends who will not work out unless they go to a gym. Okay. I personally, it makes no difference if I have a gym membership. I have the equipment here at my house. I don't need anybody. I don't need to join a class. I don't need a group. But what you do need to do is be real with yourself and say, is this something I can do? If I know that treadmill or spin bike is in the bonus room, am I actually going to go up there and use it? Or am I the kind of person that has to pack my gym bag and do it on the way to work? Or I'm just not going to, I'm just going to put laundry on it. So be real with yourself when you come up with these scenarios, because in my personal approach, I wish I could tell you I had this endless amount of willpower. I don't have an endless amount. And I think science has shown the further you go in the day, the less willpower you have. When you think about mistakes that go public, they generally happen in the evening. Whether you're somewhere where you shouldn't have been, or somebody did something they shouldn't have, that generally happens in the evening, where you've used your decisions. Talk about habits sparing a lot of your willpower and your brain power. You've exhausted that resource by the evening. Be cautious about how you refill that tank of how you replenish yourself and the company you're in and the situations you put yourself in.
Yeah. Well, let me throw a small wrench into this conversation. So again, if you're listening to us and you start feeling a little bit kind of guilty and a little bit ashamed, so let me just kind of clear a couple of things here. So when Daniel was saying, when you write it down, it's exponentially more important, right? It reminds you that this was you, it was your goals. Well, here's the thing. If you are not connected to the source of love, right? If you look at a piece of paper and you know you haven't done it, right? And you know you haven't done it, and you looked at it 10 times, and it's exponentially more important. But if that intrinsic framework is not there to remind you that you're good enough, you deserve way more than what you currently have, your self-esteem will not be altered, right? Your self-esteem will not be kind of like, shoot, another failure, right?
Right.
So maybe let me throw just another maybe. So you've built a great foundation here for this conversation here, Daniel. But let me slide one little tiny.
Yeah, I don't consider that a wrench, Anton, because the problem that I have is that people who don't write don't know why they're doing it. They're just doing it because they feel like they're supposed to be doing it. Yeah, or somebody made a comment that hurt their feelings, and so they said, "Well, then I'm going to go do this." Well, you haven't taken the time to define why it's important for you to do this, and you haven't defined that it is important to you. So when you're just something shows up in your Instagram feed that I can get you to this point, this before and after picture in 45 days. Okay.
Yeah.
Classic marketing.
And another piece, since you're talking about the drive, what gets you there to begin with, just another thing to like make a note, guys. Enneagram system divides us into 9 groups of personalities, and there are 3 basic emotions that drive us, right? It could be fear, it could be shame, and it could be guilt, right? Mm-hmm. So those are not the emotions you want to be basing on. But sometimes, like me personally, I know I need to get angry at something. I just need to be super upset. I mean, then I'm unstoppable. Now, if you shame me into things, it doesn't work. You make me fear something, kind of, but doesn't work. But like, I really have to get upset with something. So just a little quick, again, you've built a great foundation. I'm just going to slide in a small piece of paper right underneath it. Know who you are, just like Daniel said. Enneagram system is a great way to start. And just love yourself and remind yourself that you deserve a whole lot more than what you currently have. So, guys, let's get personal here. So again, we're not trying to shame anybody, right? I'm already feeling it. I'm looking at Daniel and at how like you're in shape and just like. So anyway, let's get personal here. What type of habits have changed your life in a sense? And let's be real here for a second. Or another way to maybe ask this is, what type of habit are you working on currently that you think has the biggest impact on your life?
Yeah, and this is how you know you're dealing with somebody who appreciates habits. Is there is no finish. I'm constantly going, is this still serving me? Benjamin Franklin is one of the most prolific thinkers of our time, and I was reading a book about him a few years back, and he actually chose like one of the 13 virtues every single month to work on for his entire life. Like his entire life, would put one of the virtues, I'm going to work on this virtue this month until he died. Because there is no finish. There is no, now that I'm a brilliant ex-president, whatever, there is no sort of, and I guess he wasn't a president, but there is no finish line for people who appreciate habits. You got to look at them, right? It's infinite game, and it's kind of like saying, well, when are you now? As if you want to go talk about the book From Good to Great, when are you now a level 5 leader? Well, level 5 leaders don't just plateau and stop off. They're constantly stepping back and going, how do I make this better?
I love it.
And by the way, as you age, you have to reinvent what your diet is supposed to be, the things that served you yesterday. The way I exercised 10 years ago is not the way I exercise now. I would get hurt a lot more often. And as I've told people, one of the biggest ways of staying healthy after 40 is don't get hurt. Don't get injured, because getting injured takes the fun out of exercising, and if the fun isn't in exercising, it's a lot easier.
And then the healing, right? If you're not consuming enough building blocks for proteins and things like that, I mean, healing could take years.
Yeah, which is why these sort of high results, quick result diets and exercise do not generally go hand in hand, because you're depriving yourself and then you're increasing your exertion. It's only a matter of time before the two sort of collide and cause problems.
Man, I love it, Daniel. Okay, guys, let's get personal here. Remember that? Let's go back to the question. I love discussing these things. I just want for people to get something that's very actionable right out of this conversation. So, guys, again, Matt, I'm looking at you right now. So, give us an example of a habit that you've developed at some point, maybe currently working on, that you're saying I've missed this part, and like. What's your world is looking like when it comes to habits?
So maybe this is tied in, Daniel, there as far as to maybe do some of the larger habits. Do you need to start with the smaller habits? Like that's just part of your daily routine. And frankly, I don't have that, right? Like I don't have putting those virtues down, right? Practicing those, a different one each month, right? I don't really have a set of habits that I'm actively working on to improve. Now, I keep thinking about it. I know some that I would like to work on. Some you do get started with, right? You start working out a couple of days, then you take a couple of weeks off, right, to get it going. But maybe is there something too that focusing on it on a regular basis with some smaller achievable type things, right? Whether, and maybe it's something you enjoy, maybe you're a person that likes to journal, or you like to have your task to-do list, and you keep that regularly updated. Maybe you like to update your checkbook, right? And it's just something that you do as a
kind of puts you back
habit.
together.
Frankly, I don't have a lot of habits like that. I've got a very inconsistent schedule. I've spent a lot of time on the road and multiple locations and properties and time schedules and people from around the world on completely different schedules. So that's quite complicated to build some of those habits that ideally under a different situation, I could work on. But I know beforehand, we also talked about the other complications as far as with family as well too, right?
That's right.
And the demands there, and with your work, and there's always something pulling you right off track in that regards there. So anyways, just speaking openly, kind of where I'm at with this, and just thinking through here, it's, what, do I need to spend a little bit more time on those kind of smaller things and really get that organized? And then maybe it'll be a little bit easier to attack some of those larger ones.
So the first part I'll start with of your question is, you said, should it be better to start with the small habits or the bigger habits? I'm a little fuzzy what a small habit is versus a big habit. If you wanted to say something like running 5 miles versus just walking for 10 minutes, that's the volume itself. When you dissect a habit, you have like a cue, a stimulus, and a reward. I think it's a cue, a response, and reward. But you have, and then with the reward, one would think that that's where you basically get addicted to the thing. What I would start by saying is, what I do is I have micro steps before the hard step. And if you ever watch Olympic athletes like Phelps or any of those, they do not ever get out of their car, walk up to the pool, and jump in the water. It doesn't happen because they've spent years crafting this series of steps that gets them mentally ready for what is about to happen.
Man, I love it.
You have a playlist, you have this warm-up routine that you do. So for me, on the issues, Matt, especially when I don't have, I can tell you the number one thing that is my eternal freaking challenge, and that is if I don't get a good night's sleep. And it happens more often than I care to admit, but it is so hard for me to get motivated if I didn't sleep well and the alarm goes off to just go, well, forget it, I'm tired. So what I have to do in those situations is, I say, well, regardless, I'm going to get out of this bed because I need to get up at the same time either way. And then I go, I'm just going to go downstairs. I'm just going to get my water because I hydrate at the beginning of the day very heavily. And then I have some tricks that I play on myself where, I'm still not sure if I'm going to work out yet, but I'm going to go ahead and put this heart rate monitor on my arm. And I have, I don't know if I mentioned last time, like one of the cheapest, most effective supplements you can take is baking soda. Putting a pinch of, I think we talked about that. Baking soda.
You mentioned it last time. You can exercise more, right? You mentioned that last time.
It buffers it's an alkalizer, so it buffers your lactic acid. And quite frankly, for the use of this habit, it really doesn't matter whether it works or not. It is, when I drink the water with some baking soda in it, and the first thing in the morning, it basically tells me I've now committed to the workout. I've drank the baking soda, I've drank the water, and my mind goes, I've got the heart rate monitor on. Let's just go ahead and start. So
it's like a sequence of steps. It's like you're launching a sequence, right? There's in like algorithm programming, like when a plane is landing, there's a sequence. What's a protocol, right? And once you get started with the first step, the next one is kind of follows automatically almost. Man, I love it. That's a really good advice. Man.
Yeah, it's getting into a funnel, right? Getting into that pipeline to really get to it.
And I mean, writers like Stephen King and some of these others, they'll tell you there's like 10 steps I do every single morning, not Monday through Friday, but every single day that I do that end with me sitting down and writing. And that's the point, is to you, Matt, whether or not it's the outcome is, well, I take 1,000 steps before my first cup of coffee. That's a good active goal. You got, well, what's going to happen when you get used to getting out there and walking for 3 or 4 minutes, and then you turn around? It's a lot easier to go, well, let me just stretch this out a little bit. So that's the way I would start, is to say, what are the triggers you can put in place where you go, okay, I've committed that I'll put my shoes on even if I don't go for a walk or something like that. And by the time I disable the alarm system and have my water, I'll think, well, let me just circle a block one time. And if I don't want to do the rest of the steps, I don't have to. Tiptoeing it in on the days that are hard is anybody can be disciplined when you're feeling wonderful. I think it's easy when you got all the energy in the world to jump in there and do it. Unfortunately, those are not the majority of the days.
What I'm
So
hearing,
do you feel yourself bailing out sometimes in those situations? Like, do you kind of let yourself off the hook sometimes when you're like, what, it's just a busy day at work, and
you like went to sleep late or something like that, right?
Yeah.
There's days where I fold, and the James Clear from Atomic Habits put it best, and he said, you don't miss it twice. Everybody misses a gym day. Don't miss it twice, because when you miss twice, then 3 times, and then next thing you know, it's been 2 weeks since you've gone, and then you got to jump back in and start all over. And that is just a horrific experience. Starting the gym over every 3 or 4 months, which I see a lot of people do. They'll come in for 2 or 3 weeks. They'll get past the soreness and fatigue. Oh, I got to go to a family thing this next week, so I'm just going to take next week off. To which I'm always like, that's a terrible idea. Do not take the week off.
But I think in that situation, right, you're kind of putting yourself in an accountability position there as well, too, right? Like, you almost feel guilty because you're like, man, I've already made it out here. I've already got around the block. Why not go ahead and start that jog or that extra effort, right? Versus deciding that maybe when you're in bed, when the alarm keeps going off and you keep hitting the snooze, then.
So one thing I've always struggled with is journaling in the morning, and I've never had a problem voice journaling. I do that all the time, but actually typing out words in the morning is something I've always struggled with. And the way that I got around it, to kind of nod back to Anton here, was I finally had to give myself grace, and I said, look, here's the deal. You don't have to type 500 words, but you do have to sit in front of your keyboard without opening the internet for 5 minutes. And of course, as soon as I open the Word doc, I start typing. It just, every single time. I'm not going to sit here and be bored. But I also told myself, you don't have to write a single word. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is just open the Word doc and wait for 5 minutes, and then you can go back about your day. So it got to the point, I can tell you actually 2 habits that I picked up in the last couple months, and both of them seem to be serving me well. And by the way, neither of them had to do with training, by the way. So just so y'all don't think I'm all about the training. One of them is journaling in the morning, and it got to the point, I remember, I think after a week, that I almost couldn't wait to turn off my alarm, because I was like, man, I have like some thoughts I really need to get out onto the pad today, because it became more and more apparent that if I didn't write in the morning, I was much less productive during the day. Anything would distract me. I would say, I don't know whether this is a priority or not. It can wait. But if I had typed out like, this is something I really want you to do today. This is something and some of it's reflection, but some of it is, I really need to get this done to feel good about myself today. And by golly, it's like all of a sudden that thing that you've identified and written down, it's like circumstances sort of part like the Red Sea or whatever, and you're able to get in there and get it done because you basically have written it down. And there are times where you don't, but it's much more likely to get done when I write it down at the beginning of the day and say, this is something I want to get to today. You can't see it, but I've got a whiteboard next to me. And if I feel like something's important, I'll write it right here on the whiteboard. Stupid thing. Of course, I have a phone right here that's as smart as heck. But if I write it on this whiteboard over here, I have to see it. And there's something about writing it that goes, okay, now I've written it out. And I'll find myself with idle time downstairs between, say, cooking dinner and eating dinner, or after I eat dinner, where I would normally just pick up my phone or, whatever, go watch something on Netflix, and I'll go, no, I wrote that thing. Let me get that done. Then I'll feel like I can relax. So writing that out is journaling in the morning is one thing I've done, and then to sort of offset that, I've put a big over the last I think about 100 days. I put a priority on playing music in the evening and practicing. And so I had a rule. I think it started with talking about like trickle effects. I came up with a rule because I was struggling with sleep. I had to turn off all the powered lights in the house off at 8 o'clock. So no TV, no power light, which meant I either had to read or play music or talk to the kids or whatever. And the idea there was to wind down to bedtime naturally so that I was ready to go to bed at a reasonable hour. You'd be surprised when you don't have any lights turned on how tired you get after an hour. It with just candles. I mean, you'll find yourself going, I could just roll over and go to sleep.
I've got my lights here in my office. I love what you're saying. I've got my lights here in my office that I've got a Hue Philips Hues. And there's a button on my phone, and I flip it, and everything turns kind of dim and yellow. And yeah, you're right. 45 minutes down the road, you're like, okay, what time is it? I'm ready to go to sleep. Yeah,
it removes the blue.
I don't know if you realize it or not, but let me say this: you're using, you guys know, in like process design, things like that, push versus pull.
Yeah.
You are so much against the push and so much for the pull. It's unbelievable. Everything that you say, every sentence that comes out of your mouth is pull, pull, pull. Meaning, like, you don't. And I think that's what maybe that's a trick. Like, you don't want to push yourself into a large scale adventure and goals because that's intimidating. It's whatever. You want to fall into this easiest piece of it initially. And then you want the rest of the process, the rest of the kind of habit, pull you back into the larger scope. I like what you said, running 15 miles and walking like one loop, say outside of your house. It's essentially the same habit, but somehow we're not formulating it the same way in our minds because we say, I want to run 15 miles, and that's what's challenging. That's what's so devastating to ourselves. But be active, step outside of the house at 7 a.m. or whatever. That's what gets you started. And then just the scale of it, just the fact that you're going to go further every single time will get you to it. So you're using the pull approach like unbelievable amount of times, at least what you're talking about here. Guys, I want to focus your attention a little bit about, and we've started discussing this. Let's focus a little bit more about morning routines. Like, what's the deal? Why? And I think you've already touched on that quite a bit. I just want us to never forget that we're like, people are listening to us right now, right? And so not everybody's on the same page with writing in the morning, right? With journaling. I mean, that sounds amazing. Like, I'm inspired by just listening to you, Daniel. Which, by the way, a habit that I want to develop is that I'm working on is writing and content. And
same here. So maybe we can hold each other accountable.
There you go. Let's do it. So writing, I didn't realize, but how much in a content creation writing has just a huge chunk. Now, this is very unscripted, right? I've got my notes in front of me right now, but it's just a friendly conversation. But for a bit more of a high quality content, you want to have a structure. You want to write it down. You don't want to read it, but you want to write it. So anyway, and so if you guys are listening to us, you're a small business owner, writing content, journaling, like Daniel said, being active, all that's important. And Daniel, any other thoughts as far as the morning routines, and why not in the evening?
Sure.
First of all, I function better in the evening. Like, why not evening, Daniel? Come on.
I think, what I was starting to say about the evening routine was it serves me as a transition towards relaxing, right? When I'm doing morning routines, they serve as a transition to getting
being active,
prepared, and being active and taking on the day. So all I'm saying is I've buffered the time at the beginning and end of the day with habits that are appropriate to set my mind for that time.
Now, does winding down in the evening, does it have a lot to do with how you start the day?
Well, if you mean like I designed the wind down routine so I'll be better rested in the morning. Is that what you mean? Or
well, I'm thinking. So, for example, I've been listening to the same guy. What's his name? Andrew
Huberman.
Huberman.
Yeah.
He mentioned something about it. He said the way you start your day has a lot to do with how you end the day, because if you're in the evening, if you don't feel sleepy in the evening, you're not ready to kind of go to sleep and rest.
Right, which is why I picked up one of his habits, which was always expose yourself to the sun as early as possible. He says if it's sunny, 5 to 8 minutes is appropriate. If it's overcast, it's 10 to 15 minutes. And I basically try to do that every day. So right now in Tennessee, the sun rises late. It goes down early. So you got to kind of fit it in where you can. But by the time the sun comes up, I've generally been up for a few hours. And so I make that part of my routine. In fact, after I work out, I'll earmark 5 to 8 minutes of just pure stretching in the sun. So I'll go out on my porch because I'll time it to where the sun crests the mountain, and I'll be able to stretch and get a little bit. And the idea there, Matt, is that it cues your brain to say that in 16 hours it's time to go to bed, or whatever the number of hours is.
Interesting.
And it prepares that directs. And it's not, by the way, it's not just through your eyes. He's basically saying, if you're completely covered up, it doesn't work nearly as well because the skin is basically absorbing that sun, and it's setting your brain's circadian rhythms.
And the idea is that you, some of us, including myself, I'm realizing, because I've done that habit as well for about 3 months or so. I got to go back to it. See, that's me and habits. But you're not fully up until you do what you're saying. So by the time it's evening, you haven't, like, especially, I don't know, like I sit a lot. I'm indoors a lot. And so I haven't exerted myself. I haven't pushed myself. I haven't been up enough for me to go down in the evening. It's just kind of continuous, monotone, like straight line of, I don't sleep well, but I don't function well, but I don't sleep well. You just kind of find that middle. And the wave pattern, right? The let's get started, let's go, full force, right? That helps you wind down in the evening. So when I learned that changed my perspective about morning, especially. So
one other Huberman tip. Now I was actually doing this I had a podcast guest over a year ago. I'm happy to say I've kept this habit for over a year. And I had heard it and read it for years. And I was like, I tried it for a couple of days, quit. Tried it for a couple of days. But I had a guest on my podcast, and he said, this is how I start my day. And I don't know what it was, but I said, well, that's what I'm going to try for a month. And I've stuck with it ever since. I take the coldest shower I possibly can in the mornings. I stick the water on as cold as it'll go. And the Huberman will argue that the data says you get up to 4 hours of basically a boost from a cold shower, which is why I do not take cold showers in the evening. In fact, I take a hot shower right before bed, and it is my cue that the day is over. It relaxes me. And in fact, I enjoy hot showers now probably 2 or 3 times more than I used to because it was the norm back then. But now when I take a hot shower, I know that I'm about to go to bed. So it works really well for me. For those of you looking for cheap solutions, a cold shower is very cheap, and you will find yourself saving a lot of water.
Guys, cryo. I've tried cryo a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
And Matt's Jessica, she was the one to inspire my wife, and so my wife was like, "I've got a free credit, whatever. Let's go." And I was like, and I love cold therapies, any sort of cold plunging, stuff like that. Man, just try it. Just try it.
Did you do the chamber or spot treatment?
I've done the it's a room, so you walk in.
Yeah, that's the chamber.
It's a cooler environment first, and then it's extremely cold. It's like negative 100 degrees by Celsius.
So if you have like an ache or a pain, they'll do a spot treatment with like basically like a reverse vacuum, and it'll blow that cold air on the spot. So if you have like a problem with like arthritis or something, you can get a spot treatment.
Guys, I went outside and the sun was hitting pretty hard. So my head was warm, but my scalp was still cold. Like, it's unbelievable. I mean, it sounds horrible, and it is horrible. Like the last minute, the last 30 seconds, I mean, your brain is convincing your body that it's okay. You don't need to panic. I mean, the last 30 seconds is unbelievable. Yeah. Last 30 seconds last a lot longer than the first minute because you've got a guy out there and he counts it for you. So cryo, I mean, I am such a big fan of it. Guys, let me, not shifting gears by any means, but let's talk about 2 components of habits here for a second. So there's 2 pieces of nature. There's 2 pieces of us, right? There's a balance and there's a drive component of us, right? And so like you were saying, Daniel, it's important to be fully content, to be relaxed, to be here, to be present, to be balanced, to be recentered every single time, right? But yet find that ability to drive yourself, right? And and those two, this dichotomy, like may seem like it's elements of those are polar opposites of each other, right? Is it? And how do we create that balance versus drive,
Right.
a piece in our lives with habits?
Yeah, I don't consider balance and drive as the two things. I think it's the desire to preserve, protect, and basically do nothing is on this side, and then drive is the other, and balance is in between those two. So I look at it as there are times where I have to listen to that voice that says, "This is not you've already done your workout this morning. You don't need to go back out there today." Or maybe you told yourself that you wouldn't go to the well every time you go to do a workout. You're only supposed to do that 1 or 2 times a week, right? So there are times where I listen to that voice and go, "Yeah, you're right. I'm getting carried away. It's my ego or whatever." But then there's the times that I'm like, I just don't feel like doing it. I just don't feel like doing it. And I go, well, why don't you feel like doing it? Is this really a valid reason? So for your balance, I go, who are you going to listen to today? And going back to where we started this whole interview, which is, who do you want to be? Well, who do you want to be is where you should define what a balanced person looks like. And when I think of balance, I think of you should always be looking at where to, like, some part of your life should almost always be out of balance, right?
Unbalanced? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
I think some part of you, whether you're working on your relationship, whether you're working on your career, whether you're working on your health, whether you're trying to save more money, whatever, some part of you is going to have stretch and manipulate to grow.
Is that because it creates desire? Because when you're fully content, you're like, I'm good, right? Is that
well, I'm not sure whether that's the case or not, but what I will tell you is this: when you try to do all those areas at once, that's when chaos erupts. Where you're like, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to work on my relationship, I'm going to work on my career, and I'm going to do all these other things. I'm going to spend more time with the kids. If you do all that at once, that's when you are the opposite.
Instead of all that, you're eating chocolate and watching Netflix all night, right?
There you go. Yeah, because your willpower is shot because you've drained it every which way. So I think part of growth is going think about a conversation with your partner, and you go, where can we push for the next 30 or I got this new project at work. Do you feel like, or this promotion, that's a common conversation between couples that I'll hear from time to time is, well, I got this promotion opportunity, and if I take it, I know I'm going to be super busy for at least 120 days, right? Mm-hmm. So that's an example where you go, okay, well, some stuff is going to be on the back burner, but let's agree at what balance looks like. And if you're in a relationship, your partner might say, well, I'll start picking up the kids from school 2 more days a week so that you can stay later at work. Or if you say, Matt decides he wants to do a half Ironman, how do you feel about me leaving the house 2 days a week at 5 a.m. to go biking, and I won't be home till 7 p.m., 2 days a week? So these are the conversations where some part of you, in order to grow, you have to disrupt the balance. But if you're only doing one of those growths at a time, you can sort of maintain the ship, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of like that because it's not necessarily a permanent thing either, right?
No,
especially when you're talking
when you're
family
talking
or a spouse, or
you need to say here's an example when it's going to stop, how it's going to taper down, and how it's going to change. I mean, when you think about, we've all had, known people who are executives who you watch them just work themselves out of a family. And if you were to sit down and ask those men or women, they would say, well, I was working so hard because I wanted to provide for my family, right? But after 2-3 years, the family was like, no, this isn't really what we want. We want time with you. And not knowing how to shift those things back. There wasn't a finish line in mind, or they didn't honor it,
right? Because it's a habit.
Oh yeah.
My software, my hardware, everything is kind of optimized for me to go drive and and earn some more and make some more money. But maybe that
Yeah,
balance
and this-
part. See, that's
well,
that's
and
why I
this-
asked that question between balance and drive, because I do think of like money making activity as a it has a lot to do with drive, at least initially, right? Investing, that's more of a kind of getting yourself kind of recenter, rebalance, and kind of choose wisely certain things. But then going and hustling out there, that's drive, right? But family relationship, that's, again, I don't think about it as spectrum just like you do. I think you're 100% right. But sometimes it does take a little bit of a kind of, let me calm myself down. Let me come back to the why, to who I want to be, and only then you find some kind of, some sort of strength to go back into recentering activity.
That's right. And so I think Napoleon is credited with saying every virtue taken to the extreme becomes a vice. And when you think about how much we're all men here, how much do women generally think of a guy who doesn't want to work or doesn't hold a job? Not a lot. So you go, well, it's in my best interest to work and provide, right? But then there's the tipping side of that scale, right? Where you go, now what if, I'm sure you don't know anybody that this has ever happened, where they actually choose to go to work as opposed to deal with their problems in their personal life. Because they basically go, if I'm here, I don't have to deal with that. And I can just come home exhausted on Saturday and we don't talk about it. So that's an example, Anton, of how habits can be good or bad in the sense that they're working towards or against the person you want to become. They can all start innocent enough. And you could argue the same thing with food. You have to eat food to survive. Dieting, by definition, is you're withholding from yourself. So there's some part of you that has to have the food. But then we know just as often that it's because you're bored. It's because you're upset. You're eating the things that don't serve you because you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So that's another example of how the habit of eating itself isn't good or bad. It's how you leverage it. The same with what you were saying about work.
So Danny, you've got a fairly regimented, right, as far as kind of eating, diet, schedule for the most part, based on what I've heard so far. Is that fair?
It's fair.
Yeah.
There's a science going on out there, Matt.
Right.
Yeah. I think the way that I've just going back to journaling and knowing who you want to be, it's become much easier to have rules for myself because in fact, I think if you're the kind of person who wants quantitative feedback on why you should change and if you should change and what you should change, these new devices that you put on your arm and they tell you your blood sugar instantly, it's giving you direct. I had a friend the other day that had one, and they were talking to me how certain foods they ate spiked their. They could just look on their smartphone. They ate these certain foods and it spiked their blood sugar super high. Certain ones didn't, and the point of that being, they were getting basically biofeedback at a rate that served them very quickly. And so when you say regimented, I have looked at not only how do I feel today when I eat certain things, but how do I feel the next day? And when I was able to tie those two together, it became actually much easier. People will be shocked at how easy it has become for me to avoid things like they bring donuts to the office all the time. I can't even remember the last time I had one because I just don't even crave them. There are sweets that I do crave, and I make sure that they're not handy. So when I do all the grocery shopping, and I know that if you put it in your cart, it goes in your stomach. Okay. So if you're putting it in your cart, it doesn't matter if it's on sale, whatever it is, whenever my hand gets on an item at the grocery store, I go, okay, are you comfortable with this going in your stomach? A nice rule of thumb is that you can have sweets if you want them, but you have to make them. And what it does is it puts about an hour gap between making and baking cookies and eating the cookies.
Are you
and
sure
you find out
Right.
you find out real quick that you're like, oh my gosh, I'd rather just eat this apple than have to make the cookies. I mean, I'm
and
not.
also probably seeing the amount of sugar that goes into a particular thing, right?
Oh,
It
sure.
makes you question
Yeah.
it again. You're like, well, what if I do stevia? What if I do this and that? Yeah. Speaking about sugar, that was a big habit that I had to develop at some
Yeah.
point. Man, and you're 100% right as far as this whole pull versus push. I 100% agree with you. I function the same way. I don't buy junk food. I'll go eat. I'll go if I come to someone's house, if someone's eating it, someone's offering, sure, I'll eat it. Not sugar, but like fried this and the other. But I'm not gonna buy it. And so that's one. So that's a pull piece that I think first little small initial step that gets you to a bigger goal.
I think people would be surprised, Anton, at when I talk about small changes. You know, if for example, if someone makes a homemade apple pie, I'll probably have. I mean, it's rare that I go to someone's house and they have a homemade apple pie versus store bought, but I'll have a piece. But I may not have a big scoop of ice cream on top of it, and I'll eat a lighter dinner leading up to that. But the point is that sort of those really small incremental changes lead to the fact that I don't feel miserable after the meal, and my blood sugar's not crashing, and I don't wake up in the middle of the night hungry, which is what happens if I have sweets after dinner. I'll wake up at 4 a.m. going, oh.
So maybe we double click on that a little bit there. As far as Daniel, you said you feel it, right? Like with all the training that you've done and so forth, like you feel it. And I feel like I didn't recognize that for a long time. I think age may play partially into that as well too, right? Where you don't really notice much difference if you run on pizza and some sweets but I think eventually, right, probably as you enter into your 30s, going into 40s, right, you start to notice maybe, or you get tuned in, right, given your the training.
That's an excellent point, Matt. And here's what I'll say about that. If you go, like a lot of people do, dry January or no booze November, then you go back and have a happy hour, it will feel horrible. And so what I'm trying to tell you is when you've gone without sugar for 2 or 3 weeks and then you go back, you find out real quick the impact on your body. You go, I can't believe I was doing this to myself on a regular
In fact, you become more sensitive.
Oh, very sensitive. And by the way, that's now, like if I have alcohol, I can only have like a drink now. And I used to, it didn't bother me at all. I mean, I mean, I was like one of those that just could pop up and didn't, whatever. But then as the years went by, I abstained from it more and more and more. And now I'm to the point where I have to be cautious because I'm like, I don't feel like it's worth it to me. And I'm trying to be social with these people. I'll still have something to drink. I don't want to be the teetotaler guy all the time. But but at the same time, I do look at this and say everything after one drink, I'm borrowing tomorrow's happiness for today. So it's just a question of how much I want to take a loan out for.
So getting that feedback, right? And I think you brought up a couple different feedback mechanisms there. One, you just feel it. Two is, hey, it pops up on your watch here, right? On your phone. Here's my blood sugar. I'm kind of getting the habit of wanting to keep that down. I've done that a lot with sugar. I'd pretty much been a hummingbird a lot of my life there, right? Fast metabolism, thin. You didn't really have to worry about, calorie intake as much there. But now that it's on the boxes of all these products, right? Not just as a carbohydrate.
Of looking at the back of the box, right? That's a habit.
Not just of a sugar. You're right. Yep. A habit there. And then you're seeing the added sugar on what's putting in. It's like, wait, hey, you're basically kind of tricking me here, right? By adding the sugar in there.
I believe at last count, there's 300 names for sugar. So one of my favorite is brown rice syrup. I always laugh when I see that, like organic brown rice syrup. I'm like,
or cane sugar juice.
Cane sugar,
Yeah, but then you get to hear other folks are saying, again, let's just kind of bring it down to earth here for just 1 second. But people are saying, like, Matt, stop it. Like, it's just a grape juice. I mean, it's 100% grape juice. And then, like you said, again.
Don't get me started on juices, Anton.
Right?
Yeah, 100% juice, right?
No
100%
fiber,
juice.
Sugar but no fiber, guys, that's a trouble waiting to happen. And so, yeah.
In fact, back to that guy who had the device on his arm, he said the number one thing that spiked my blood sugar was some apple juice I had.
Mhm.
And he said that was worse than
100%
any
natural. It's
worse
organic.
worse than any dessert he ate was a cup of juice.
Because it hits
No, it
your
really-
blood
really
so
is.
fast.
Yeah.
Right?
If you
Yeah.
look, I was a competitive athlete, and I will tell you, if you get to a point where you cannot stomach the idea of food because you've been running for so many hours or you're on an Ironman, a Coke or juice will spike that blood sugar right back up, and it just bypasses your stomach pretty much completely as far as like having to digest it. So that was I knew even when I was the athletic guy, I was like, this stuff really spikes your blood sugar fast. And to your point, Matt, it's because when you're exercising a lot, people make the comment, why are you not eating these donuts and things like that? Because you're going to burn it all off. And the truth of the matter is, I just don't. It's not about whether I would put on the weight or not. It's more of I just don't like the way they make me feel. Like when I eat them, I do not like the way I feel afterwards. I feel like something about it wasn't natural, and I don't think it's just placebo because I'll burp it up or whatever the grease, and I'll find myself saying, "Gosh, I would have felt better with just like an apple and some peanut butter or something like that."
Yeah. I think that's a good, when you explain that to people that way, very simply, like, I just don't like the way I feel afterwards. I feel like that kind of shuts down the conversation a little bit more versus like, oh, I'm not into sugar. I'm not into fats. I'm better than you are, basically. Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, hey, this is just for me. Right. Like, here's how I feel afterwards. And then, you might impact change on them because
that's
they're
actually
going to ask you.
That's a great idea, Matt. Just say, hey, it just affects me differently. Say, I just don't handle it well. And I mean, I don't think most people handle it well, but when you say it that way, it's like, well, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, like mental state, energy wise, right? Your desire to like go next day, wake up full of energy and kind of do. Yeah, sugar, when you eat it in the evening, I mean, it's like I wake up tired. Like I don't want to do stuff, and all of a sudden that breaks up that loop that you've been working.
I'm going to tell you the danger of sugar for me, and I think I alluded to this earlier, which is I noticed that it wasn't just the crash that came in 90 minutes or whatever. It was actually 24 hours later, I would crave the exact, like I would have a sweet after dinner, in the exact same time the next night I would start looking to the pantry. Like, what do I have? Okay, I'm not going to make cookies, but I've got chocolate chips. And that was where I realized, like, wow, it only takes a couple of days of a sweet for my brain to go, I need that hit. I need those instant carbs like right now. And so that's the other part of it I'll say is it's not just how I feel in the day, but I also realized, man, if I eat this thing, I'm going to be craving sweets tomorrow or something like that. So,
because again,
it's a hard one, right?
Keep in mind, guys, that sweets is what high calorie, low nutrient food. So you're full for only so long, and next thing you know, your body tells you, dude, we need more nutrients. Let's go eat. And all of a sudden, you eat the same thing, and that creates a cycle, and that creates a really bad outcomes for yourself. Yeah.
And just so people know, I eat dessert almost every night. It happens to be like blueberries, Icelandic yogurt, which is super high in protein, and then I'll put a little bit of like allulose or fake sugar on there with it, and with maybe a little bit of granola. But it's basically a fairly low sugar, high nutrient, high protein satiety, and I look forward to it. In fact, I've gotten to the point that I crave it so much that compared to any traditional dessert, like I think I was making a dessert for my son the other day. And I had I know what it was. I bought him some ice cream. We were at the store and I let them each get their own ice cream. And I had a bite of his ice cream. My teeth started like instantly when that sugar hit my mouth. I was like, whoa, I forgot how sweet this kind of stuff is. I imagine it's like for people who've been on Diet Coke a long time, they go and drink a real Coke or something where it just hit me so hard.
Guys, in the evening, sweet potato fries. They're orange. Everything is orange and yellow, is anti-inflammatory when it comes to fruits and vegetables. Wonderful. I mean, it's a little sweet, and it's just a great way to also kind of wrap up your day, a little snack.
Absolutely.
I can't go to sleep being hungry. So
maybe some other options there too. Maybe some other. So maybe like whipped cream, right? Like a lot of times whipped cream really doesn't have much sugar. If it's like a real type of a whipped
no,
cream.
I think whipped cream is a great addition. There are certain things. I mean, it's just a question of how much time you're willing to put into it.
Yeah,
For example,
right.
what I do to ensure I always have my desserts handy are I get the huge bags of frozen blueberries from Costco and have them sitting in my freezer. So they're basically, I've got weeks of dessert, and then I get the Greek yogurt, the sugar-free Greek yogurt. So I've got everything just right there on hand to where I know that within 5 minutes, if I want that dessert, I've got it.
All right, let's do the Costco plug real quick here, right?
Yeah.
So we've got that. We've got with stevia. Antonio and I were talking about that, right? Some
Huge
of the soda there. I think it's Zevia, I think is the name of the soda brand there.
I've got a funny Zevia
Little
story
city
for you.
Picked up a case of that. Was like, wow, I was pretty blown away there as far as just kind of hit that craving.
Hey man, you guys talk about the economy and inflation. That I can't think of. Every time I go to Costco, I go, this is the way that you can save a ton of money during the year. If you buy these, a big bag of black beans, like enough for your family for like a month. I'm talking about the uncooked black beans. So if you have like an Instapot pressure cooker, you can feed your family with that and some rice and then some basic protein. Get your chicken and you are set.
It's about 5-6 cents a serving for rice, for like black bean, for like 3/4 cup oats, things like that. That's where when people say like eating healthy is expensive, it's like, well, if you get some of the basics going there, right, there's ways to kind of focus where you spend. So
if you want to argue it's expensive, my argument is always, well, are you willing to put in the time? Because if you want to if you're just in a hurry, it's always going to be quicker to open a wrapper, right?
Right.
I mean, having bananas and apples and stuff, they've done studies. If you have that in an area where it's seen and you don't have sweets that are seen, people are much more likely. The same goes, by the way, if you have a toaster on your countertop, they've done studies that basically those people ate 150 more calories a day because they would go, well, there's the toaster. I'm going to make bread, right?
I bought it for something, right?
Yeah. And it's already out there. So this goes back to habits. So you got to surround yourself with things that put your habits, like have that Vitamix super handy, have everything that you need in place to where it's like you're putting success in the way. So going back to what I said about how I started playing music in the evening, I started putting my guitar in front of the television so that I would basically, while I would, if I went to sit down, I'd have to basically move the guitar out of the way to watch television. And what did I do after a while? I started opening it up and playing. And then with each passing day, if you were to like chart out my time playing guitar, I quit turning the TV on. I started playing the music. Then I was like, well, the rule is I have to have all the lights out by 8 o'clock. So I already have that rule. So now I'm going to use that time to play music. And it's been actually a really fun journey of
which, by the way, is a pull activity again. See, so guys, just pushing yourself. Those who are listening to us, guys, pushing yourself into things, just long term, something about it just doesn't work. So I like how you, Dan, you keep talking about it, tricking yourself. Like your subconscious, right? Before we started the stream, we talked about it, how your subconscious tricks you into stuff, right? You're going back at your subconscious. Now you're programming yourself into falling into this one little tiny activity that leads to more and more and more. I love it. I think this is one of the best advices that if you guys get anything out of this live stream, get that. Pull versus push. Pull yourself into it, like fall into it kind of thing. Guys, we have been here for an hour. Does it feel like it has been an hour?
Nope.
No, I feel like we're just getting started. So we cannot leave this live stream tonight without talking. Which, by the way, calls for, I think, for part 2. Right? Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do part 2 soon. But let's wrap it up with this. We've not surprising, right? We've invited a nutrition exercise expert here, and we talk about nutrition and exercise. Right? What a shocker! Any sort of habits that help you guys stay productive throughout the day? Let's talk about that for a little bit. How do you guys stay productive? What can I do if I struggle with being productive throughout the day, right? Accomplishing certain things.
I struggle with this one a lot.
Yeah.
And
what's your thoughts, guys, on that?
My advice on this is going to be similar to the other things, which is you kind of have to remove the temptations, put success in your way. So if I'm serious about getting something done, the first rule is I'm not allowed to have my phone in the same room as me. So, or I put it in do not disturb, because they've done studies with every foot that phone is away, you are more likely to be able to finish a thought without. And they've even done studies where they turn the phone off and put it in front of the person, and still they just would see it and their mind would just keep wandering back to that phone, back to that phone. So that's tip number one is, if you're serious about this project, this article, Anton, you got to write some content today, you put that phone in do not disturb or put it in the other room. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing is a technique called the Pomodoro technique. And it's named after a tomato because I think the Italian gentleman who came up with it actually had a tomato timer. But it's so stupid and simple, but it works so well. So I actually use a timer, and I put my headphones on to where I guess it's cheating because it is an app on my phone. But I put the app on.
25/5, right? Do you use that? 25/5?
Yeah, 25/5. Yeah, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's
it's
what
a
I
timer
do.
that reminds you that 25 minutes passed. Go take a 5-minute break. Come back.
I put that thing on, and I put the white noise on, and there's actually a free app. It's called Tide, and you just set the amount of time that you want your focus for. And in fact, it has a nap timer on there, which is great for. So I take. I talk about staying productive during the day. I take 5-minute power nap in the middle of my day, and I just set the timer on it. I close my eyes, and it's basically I'm probably asleep for somewhere between 10 and 30 seconds during that. But it's just that reset that I need to pop up, especially if I didn't get a good night's sleep. You'd be surprised what that 5-minute power nap will do for me to pop out of there and go, all right, I'm back in the game. It's 11:30 now, and I'm back in the game. So that's my three things: is put your phone in do not disturb, put it in the other room if you're serious, use the Pomodoro technique, because I'll say, until this white noise is done, you're not allowed to check your email. You're not allowed to do any of that. You're going to focus. I actually did it today, so I'm practicing when I preach here. And I know that it's important if I'm willing to set that timer on the phone and say, you're not allowed. Once I do that, I'll go, okay, my back's against the wall. I got to get this done.
I love it.
If I'm just like toying around with the goal, I won't do it. But once those headphones are on, talk about those stages. I put the headphones on, I start the white noise. Then I just, boom, I'm focused. And I'm like, let's get this done. And
any thoughts, Matt? I'm sure you've got
Sorry,
you've got a couple things to say as well, because you and I will exchange on that subject quite regularly. Like, what helps you to stay productive?
I like exactly those same ideas as well too. There, I think having some of that white noise, or something about white noise, right, that just kind of kicks you into a certain mode as well too. Right. And it's different for different people, right? Like whether it's just a constant noise, like a nature type noise there.
Right.
Some people are fine with music and words. And like, I don't like to be thinking and processing like a lot of those things, right? Maybe if it's some type of, low key classical type music in the back there. And also really leveraging my calendar as well too. Because, some people have the opposite problem of, work wants so much out of them. It's so scheduled. They have meetings back to back to back. Like that part of the productivity, right? That's a big part of their work, right? They're trying to figure out, how do I push away, right, from that a little bit more to, to focus there. So I think it's very different for different individuals, right, on what, on kind of how they process this. But I think for us, right, like we're all involved with a lot with strategy and kind of thinking through these problems. They're not always very obvious. And sometimes that might take an hour or two, right, of just really, really quiet, focused time. You can't just work at it 5 minutes of the time there. So it's looking ahead at that schedule, scheduling it out, right, to that appropriate environment. And then, it's taking those breaks along the way too, because I do have a problem with, I'll get in a zone for 2 or 3 hours, and and then I come out of it, but then to go back into it, right, is quite kind of tiring, right? Because you've kind of slowed yourself down, right? Like now you're hungry to kick yourself back into it, right? Can be a challenge versus those 25-minute increments. I love that. Yeah.
I'll add 2 things to what you're saying there, Matt.
Please.
You need to step out when you're in the zone. You need to schedule getting out of the zone before you hit the wall.
Yeah.
Because Hemingway
point.
had a
Yeah.
technique when he was writing. He would say, never stop writing when you're just done. Like, stop when you're in the middle of a sentence, and then that way, when you come back the next day, well, in this
I
case,
love
when
it
you
because you're
kind of-
excited,
I
right?
love it as well.
You know where you're leaving off there and where you slide back into it. So
The second
yeah,
thing
I love
I'll
it.
add to what Matt is saying is, from a nutrition perspective, I will completely disagree with the American mantra of breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I think the more calories, whether they're healthy or not, the more calories you eat, the harder it is to think. So I
agree
never
now.
have,
Yeah.
I cannot understand how someone can have like a 1,500 calorie breakfast and then go into a meeting and think, to me, that's just, even if it's health food, it doesn't matter because your blood is still going to have to work in your stomach and do all those things. So I don't like to have a lot of calories in me when I have to do critical thinking tasks. Because once you have, when you think about like Thanksgiving and dinner and stuff like that, once you have a surplus of calories in you, it's just like you go into this, I'm completely in it. I just don't want to do anything.
You just want to sleep. Yeah,
Yeah.
You're satisfied,
rest
right?
and
Your
digest.
body is satisfied.
Pretty much.
Hey,
Yeah. Well, guys, I think this is definitely great. Just one little 2 cents I'll add. Planning. I plan my days in the evening, the day before. That helps me. First, two things. One, I kind of analyze the day that passed, right? And I say, was it successful? Was it good? Was it enough?
Yeah.
When I played basketball back in the day, I would like leave
Reflection, yeah.
One basketball player, professional basketball player, he's like, it's very important when you walk away from the court, like stop for a minute and just kind of think, how was my play? How did I do? So I kind of do that. Maybe I carried it from sports and all from back in the day. And then that helps you create a plan for the next day because you're saying, shoot, I haven't done this piece. Now let me plan it, but plan it in such a way that I'll be more productive, more effective the next day. So, guys, again, we have been here for more than an hour, and I think we're just scratching the surface. I love how packed this conversation has become. Again, conversation of habits can go so many different ways. But I mean, we talked about just multiple things here about the cost of habits, right? It's a lot easier to create a habit versus pushing yourself at will every single time, right? Creating dopamine loops, starting with why it's important, right? Ask yourself, who do you want to be, right? Those are all the things that, Daniel, you've mentioned. So journaling, I was thinking about this blue lake effect where monks go to a blue lake and remind themselves what is it that their life is looking like, what is it they want to do, journaling in your mind, so to say. Yeah. Then I love just one thing, guys, walk away with this. Push versus pull. Daniel is, I don't know if you recognize it, Daniel, but I love it. It's more of an organic approach to where you say, let me use this one little trick, small trick, that's automatic, that makes me trip into habit, right? Into a certain flow process. You call it trickle effect, right? I love it. So then, one
mantra we could leave people with is the less that your habits rely on a surplus of willpower, the more likely you are to succeed.
Yeah. Then we talked about the science, measuring things, right? Tracking things. I have a friend, and he's like, just by me tracking certain things creates a drive to, creates a habit. Which, by the way, habit trackers, a couple of really good applications that are out there. One is called Habitify. I think it's a little pricey. The other one's called, and I won't remember the cheaper one. It's $6 per year. One. So track your habits. Journal.
Journal your food. Journal your food.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. Let me see. We talked about morning routines and how important it is, right? The way you start your day is very important. Is kind of trickles down into how you finish your day, right? Exercise, rest, and I guess what I'm getting out of this is small wins. I mean, I'm more of a person of I need final result. Like I will work, I will kill myself for the final result, but the process, being in it, I think there's something about that kind of recentering activity that's extremely important. Every time you sit down to do something, are you enjoying it? Every time you leave your house in the morning, are you? So hopefully you're with me on this and kind of create a flow, a trickle effect, if you wish, to get yourself up to speed there. And I mean, I'll just add from me that last year is love yourself. I mean, we we're guys, right? If we had a lady here with us talking about habits and things like that, we would probably hear a lot more of treat yourself well, love yourself, right? But love yourself there's two different ways to love yourself, right? A chocolate cake loving yourself. Well, I love myself. I deserve chocolate cake in the evening, right? Versus shoes, gym clothing, kind of love yourself. Like, let me put a gym clothing on yourself because I love myself. And guys, those who are listening to us right now, I hope you love yourself. I hope you, even if your self-esteem hurts, even if you have written it down like Daniel is suggesting so many times, but every time the journal reminds you about how much of a failure you are, stop it right then and there. You are enough. You're good. You just need to fill yourself with just a little more love. Surround yourself with people who are kindly remind you that you deserve more. And so, and I love how
focus on how far you've come, not how you've fallen short.
Yeah, right. And I love what you guys also said in the beginning is think of 5 individuals that you're closely connected with, right? And that's you in what, 5, 10, 15 years or so. Their goals are going to become your goals. Their aspirations are going to somehow trickle down into you. And so if I get to find another 3 individuals like you guys, I'm going to be the luckiest person in the world. So I would like to thank you two, and I would like to thank all of all our listeners who have been listening to us. And I always add this at the end: if you're listening to us at the gym and you have listened to this point right here, I'm proud of you, and you're awesome because you truly love yourself, because you've been here for more than an hour. So.
Yeah,
guys, unless you want to add just anything else, I think it's calling for a big part 2, and if not part 3. We'll think of maybe a particular way to kind of dovetail that second piece into this one, but I think we're just scratching the surface. And I think that's just a reminder of how much it is important to create a community, a growth clinic community, so to say, right? And remind each other every single time, every so often, how important it is to create healthy habits, and just keep doing it. Right.
Daniel, we enjoy hearing from you here, and I'm sure others would love to hear more as well too. Where can they find you there with Chasing Energy?
Chasing Energy podcast is available wherever podcasts are listed. It's on everything from Amazon to Spotify, and I've been posting them about every other week.
Yeah,
and then my Instagram handle is at DP Lucas.
All right.
And there are a few gems out there, guys. I highly encourage you to go listen to Chasing Energy podcast. So
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Anton.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight, guys. It's always good to see you. We're gonna chit chat a little bit more about this particular subject down the road. And for now, I would like to thank all and thank you guys. Have a good night. Be safe. And
have a good night.
Keep developing healthy habits. Love yourself.
All right.
See ya.
Be well.